What is up, night crawlers? Welcome back to the Nightmare's Edge. Now, I apologize that we do not have a premiere tonight. I'll continue the hospital series next week. That being said, I did want to get a video out to you guys. This is a gem of a story. It's called The Neighbor. It's written by Br3k6n. Now, the link to the story is going to be listed in the description. Be sure to check it out. Now, sit back, relax, and let me tickle those inner fears. In the small town of Rockport, it's always blissful. Nothing out of the way or preposterous ever happens, and everybody knew something about somebody. Well, until. You see, I lived with my mother from birth, with no signs of a father. She was a pale brunette woman with a small body, with a bubbly personality that filled the room. Whenever I asked about my father, my mother would become very cagey. I never thought much about it, but I've always felt deprived of fatherly love. The void would soon be filled by my neighbor, Mr. Donovan. Mr. Donovan moved in around a month ago. Within the time he arrived, a string of murders arrived with him. These murders shook the blissful town to the point where my once perky mother became a gloomy soul. Why, you may ask? The murders all had three things in common. 1, they were all females. 2, they were all between the ages of 40 and 47, and the same age as my mother. And 3, they were all brunettes. You can imagine my mother was the perfect candidate for this killer, or serial killer rather. My mother was very suspicious and edgy when it came to Mr. Donovan. She thought it strange that right around the time he had wandered into the town, that the murders began to surface. When he started to come around and bond with me, that made her even more peevish. He had offered tickets to movies, buy me expensive gifts, and tell me weird stories. Often, ones involved with him manipulating or hurting people, which I often fascinated by seeing as I suffered intermittent explosive disorder and split personality. So in a way, I understood him. At times, when Mr. Donovan came around, if he was left with my mother for mere seconds, I would catch them talking, and when I'd ask what they were talking about, my mother would dodge and change the topic. I never paid much attention to it though. Adults are weird, right? On the day of my 18th birthday, I was very happy and also a bit sad because now I became very inquisitive about my father and decided I wanted to know more, and I wouldn't take no for an answer. "Mom, who is my father, and why won't you tell me about him?" I asked. "He's nobody," she replied. "Mom!" I said at the top of my voice. Okay, let me tell you. He's dead. I found out that he had died some years back when you were around 15, she said. I knew she was lying because she couldn't even look at me in the eyes. I became enraged. I started to swell with anger. I walked into the kitchen and she quickly followed. I placed my hands on the counter a few inches away from a knife and started cooling off. She came hastily and started rubbing my back. The personality there was no longer the loving son she knew. And in a blind reaction of explosive anger, I stabbed her with the kitchen knife and I kept going. I repeated and repeated and repeated until she was helpless. Blood was everywhere. She fell to the ground and started bleeding out. The son she knew and loved came back. "Oh no, Mom, I'm sorry. Somebody help," I shouted. I called for help as I sobbed, as if my soul was torn apart. Eventually, it was useless. After some time went, there was nobody to help. Blam! The door flew open and Mr. Donovan came in. "Help her," I necessitated. He looked at me with a smile of the devil and said, "She's not gonna make it." My mother's face began to relax as the tension left, and the breath slowly started to leave her lungs, and I heard her make a lifeless whisper, "Donovan is your father." He looked at me and smiled. His eyes were lit and his face was filled with a sudden euphoria. He then remarked, "My boy, I'm so proud of you. Your first kill is always special, and to top it off, it was your mother. Just let the other side of you free and stop suppressing it. The freedom is so much fun." I sit there in a pool of my mother's blood, in complete shock, thinking, I murdered my mother. Not only did I meet my father, but he was also a terrible person, And in a way, I was just like him, if not exactly like him. I guess it is true then. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree. And just like that, my switch flipped and I decided that he'll be added to the list of dead brunettes. I hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you so much for watching. Broken, thank you again for allowing me to read your story. I truly appreciate it. Be sure to check out the links in the description. But until next time, remember, just because you couldn't see it, doesn't mean it wasn't watching you.